talk about how the IRS states that a person elects, and that's a fancy word for voluntary, to file a tax return. If you saw the word voluntary, what would that send you a signal of, right? You have a choice, right? And who in the world would choose to pay taxes, especially a tax they don't even owe, that doesn't even apply to them? So this is election means volunteer. Just know that when we look at that in their own terminology. However, let's look at a code. Let's look at a couple of codes, and they actually have to deal with the tax preparer forms or the forms that are filled out. It begins there, right? The contract begins with the contract itself, their forms. Let's look at this code here. CFR 26, subsection 60, 601, 602. Tax return forms and instructions. The Internal Revenue Service develops forms and instructions that explain the requirements of the Internal Revenue Code and regulations. The service distributes the forms and instructions to help taxpayers comply with the law. The tax system is based on what? It's based on voluntary compliance, and the taxpayers complete and return the forms and payments and tax owed right there. Here's another one as it relates to forms. These are codes that relate to the very beginning of it, the forms. This is 26 CFR 601 602 D23. The purpose of publishing revenue, this is the purpose of publishing revenue rulings and revenue procedures in the Internal Revenue Bulletin is to promote correct and uniform application of the tax laws by the Internal Revenue Service employees and to assist taxpayers in attaining maximum what? Voluntary compliance. Oh, that's the purpose, to make sure you keep volunteering. Does that make sense to you now? If you read this, why every year they have to get you back in there year after year after year. April 15th, 2026 is coming. Better get your voluntary compliance for 2025 together. And guess what'll come after that? April 15th, 2027. You better get your 2026 voluntary compliance forms together year after year. Sign it, sign it, sign it, because you have to. If you come on Fridays, if you've been there on Fridays, and please come if you don't, or you can watch the recordings. On Fridays, we talk about the IRS letters, and they have to bluff you, scare you, spook you, make you believe you better come in and keep signing those forms every year. They say it in their own letters. That's on Fridays. Can't cover everything in one day. This is how it all begins, the voluntary compliance. And there's not a better person to kick this off with is with the horse's mouth himself. You guys don't know me. I'm just a guy on the internet. There are a few people that know me. They're in our reviews. The people that know me have said that they've known me. They testify I'm a real person. I really did do these things. I really did have a business, a successful business, millions of dollars. I really did do those things, okay? I don't ask you to believe me. Look, if you have faith enough to say, well, that makes sense, and I'm just going to take his word for it. How about this? Take his word for it. He worked for them, okay? He's an ex-IRS Criminal Investigative Division employee. Without further ado, he's going to tell his own story. Now, this is going to go 14 minutes, okay? So be patient. We'll be right back to you in 14 minutes. Listen to his story. Now, guys, it's important that this isn't too choppy. I'm just going to have to read. Unfortunately, guys, I'm apologizing. We have 2 hours here anyway. If it is choppy, if it's intelligible, unintelligible, please let me know. I'll just have to restart my computer. We'll have to restart this, okay? It's just 14 minutes, but this is crucial. For anybody new here, you have to hear it from the horse's mouth, okay? Here we go.
Well, I'm gonna have to jump through this real quick so we stay on schedule because I'm the guy before lunch and I don't want to make any more enemies than I may already have. The title of my talk is Favorite Fed, Enemy of the State, and 11 Years Flat. 1993 is when I began with the IRS. 2004 is when I was indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice. So that's an 11-year period. Or I could also call it your worst nightmare, an accountant with a gun. That was our class t-shirt in training. That's a job I did for 5.5 years, a special agent with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. This was a photo taken at the East Palo Alto, California Police Academy. I'm sorry, Citizens Police Academy. This is my family. On your left, my brother John, he's a lieutenant in the California Highway Patrol. My baby brother Jeff is next. He's an officer with the San Jose, California Police Department. My mother's in the middle, Ann, and my father passed away in 1993, otherwise he would have been in the picture too. Next is my brother Jim. He is a battalion chief in the Daly City, California Fire Department. And then that pencil neck guy over there with the little treasury badge is me. That's my Uncle Gary, 30 years with the Santa Clara County, California Sheriff's Office. Well, back when I realized that after having graduated from San Jose State and getting an accounting degree and becoming a certified public accountant, that there's no way that I could continue to be an accountant for 30-year career, I decided that I needed a little more excitement in my life, and so I applied to both the FBI and the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Now, of course, the FBI, at least up until maybe the last 10 or 20 years or so, had a pretty good reputation. I mean, who doesn't want to be an FBI agent? Sheriff Max talked about his father being an FBI agent, and Sheriff Mack maybe having that inkling himself. But I also had a friend who worked for the IRS for many years and talked to me about the Criminal Investigation Division, and their primary claim to fame was having caught Al Capone, or at least they claim all the credit for it, but I guess they kind of have to hunt around for some credit so that people will like them. Their motto there is be an accountant with conviction. Anyway, I decided to, long story that I can't get into about why the FBI didn't work out. I did qualify to go to Quantico, Virginia to be a FBI special agent, but because of a hiring freeze, couldn't quite make it. Meanwhile, the IRS contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested in a special agent position in the San Francisco, California office, and I accepted that, and in November of 1993, I was sworn in and went to training, quite an extensive training, about 16 weeks in Glencoe, Georgia, and in case there's any allegations out there that I was just one of those bozo agents who just went sideways. I don't mean this to brag, but just for a little extra evidence that I really took the job seriously and worked very hard at it. I achieved a 95% academic average in training. I was the class president of both training classes. I received a memorandum of appreciation for my service as president. He described my service as having faithfully discharged the extra duties of being president of the class. So after training, well, actually, I should say before I even went to training, I had an interesting experience that taught me about the culture inside the IRS. I had no cases to work on because it was my first day, and so I grabbed a copy of the Internal Revenue Code, which they happen to have on my shelf, and if anyone's ever seen one, it's pretty darn thick. So I turned to the criminal sections, the 7000 series, and was actually reviewing them. And my boss, Alex, who was a former Marine, he comes and barks at me and says, what are you doing? And I looked up at him and I said, well, I'm just researching the statutes that I'm actually going to be investigating and seeking prosecution on. And he said, you need to put that book away. You're no longer a CPA, you're an IRS special agent, and you don't need to be looking in that book. He also had a problem with, on my business card, actually when you're a CPA, you're supposed to be able to put it after your name in any correspondence or things like that. So put it on my card, and he didn't like that either. So I'm not quite sure what was going on there, but something having to do with thinking and researching, things that I did as a CPA prior to going in the IRS, wasn't very welcome there. If I had the time, I'd show you all my home videos about my swearing-in ceremony, but I'll just give you just a picture. It really meant a lot to me. And unlike most IRS swearing-in ceremonies, where they'll probably have a room this size with this many people, raise your right hand, it's not very serious, but it really meant a lot to me. And I will always know and remember the words that I swore an oath to. And I know that you're all familiar with the oath, and might be slight changes between federal and state, but I'm sure the same wording is used, especially there at the end. As far as my what I would call my pre-enlightenment days at the IRS, when I was in the mindset of I want to use my financial skills, my training to serve my country, protect the U.S. Treasury, I guess about as naive as one could be in terms of his goals. But again, just to point out that I was not a slug while I worked there. I rose to the highest level of a GS-13 before my 5th year employment anniversary. I earned a Superior Performance Award, a Sustained Superior Performance Award, Top Athlete Award. I was the Asset Forfeiture Coordinator for the Central California District, the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force Coordinator for the Central California District, and a Firearms and Defensive Tactics Coordinator. So you might think that that looks like a rewarding career as an IRS Special Agent. And I consider this my enlightenment process, which I'm going to have to go through very quickly. But basically, I was an avid listener of talk radio in the San Francisco Bay Area, and a talk show host had this guest. Some of you may have heard of her, D.V. Kidd. And she was talking about the federal income tax and the monetary system and the New World Order and Agenda 21 and all these different kinds of issues. And at that time, I was still like, aren't those people kooks? But I was able to see through that and just listen, because this particular host was quite provocative. He wasn't about, you know, what is or who is right or wrong, but just what is right or wrong. A very constitutionally minded gentleman named Jeff Metcalf. But after D.V. Kidd made this presentation about the federal income tax, you know, I kind of took offense at it. I mean, she even said that the federal income tax was largely a voluntary system. And, you know, the IRS gave me a Sig Sauer 9mm and bulletproof vest and shotgun training. And I thought to myself, lady, this tax ain't voluntary.
I wanted to pause that right there. Sorry, guys.
Something having to do with enforcement task 9mm and bulletproof vest and shotgun training. And I thought to myself, lady, this tax ain't voluntary.
You see that, audience? Those are all sheriffs. He's not just opening this up to the public where you got just some rebellious folks out there. This was a presentation to over 100 sheriffs. And the message, we as a people have to stop defunding the federal government and that federal income tax. That's the message. Just so you know, that's the audience here.
But I kind of looked at myself and I thought, well, okay, I could just pinch myself, but you know, I've achieved a certain amount of education and experience and training, and why does the stuff that she said, you know, maybe I should look into it more and use my skills to do so. If she's lying, then I'm going to expose her for lying. If she's not lying, then I'm going to expose whoever is lying. So as any trained investigator would do, I decided I'd utilize investigative training to seek out the truth, gather evidence, interview witnesses, present evidence to the appropriate personnel. And I did this on my own time. I interviewed people that the IRS called tax protesters. I reviewed more in depth the Internal Revenue Code, Code of Federal Regulations, court cases, and I took a closer look at IRS enforcement. In the IRS booklet, publication 17, it's interesting that they say this publication covers some subjects on which a court may have made a decision more favorable to the taxpayers than the interpretation by the IRS. Until these differing interpretations are resolved by higher court decisions or in some other way, this publication will continue to present the interpretation by the IRS. So this is a report that I prepared basically after about a 1.5 to 2 year period of evenings, weekends.
This report is on our website. On a resource page. It's a 50-page report. Highly suggest going through it. This is Joe's work that he spent a couple years on.
Trying to get through this mountain of material to determine who was telling the truth. I put some of the highlights of what I had encountered into a report that I entitled Investigating the Federal Income Tax, a Preliminary Report. The allegations, due to constitutional limitations, most Americans are not required to file income tax returns and pay income tax. 16th Amendment was not ratified, and U.S. government finances its operations through the creation of fiat money, not with revenue from income taxes. I gave my supervisors a letter along with my report, and suffice to say, or this particular sentence, if the service declines to conduct its own analysis or dismisses the evidence in this report without proper review, then I must tender my resignation. My oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States was made to God, and I cannot serve two masters. Well, to say that my presentation fell on deaf ears would probably be an understatement. I got a memorandum from my chief, who's now called a special agent in charge. IRS will not be responding to your request and will provide you with the necessary paperwork to tender your resignation. So sample fact, I can't get into all the details, but the average working American is not liable to pay the federal income tax. The law clearly states that only Americans who are liable for the income tax are required to keep records and file returns. And in case you're wondering if the IRS agrees with what the law requires, you might check out their Disclosure, Privacy Act, and Paperwork Reduction Act in the tax booklets. They refer to these sections and say that those sections say that you must file a return or statement with us for any tax you are liable for. So the IRS agrees. Well, after coming to, I had to come to some kind of a conclusion because I really didn't expect to arrive at the conclusion that I did, which was that the IRS was knowingly, at least at the upper levels, knowingly deceiving the American public and stealing their property. And so I had to look at what the IRS's own written policies and principles were in case somehow my upbringing, the ethics that my parents taught me, the ethics of the CPA profession somehow didn't give me enough ammunition as to what to do. I went to look at what the IRS said I should do. And you can see that they taught us, among other things, the core ethical principles. Many of them I'm sure you're very familiar with. I won't go through them. And of course, the words to the oath, which you all have memorized. Well, they basically gave me an opportunity to either, they didn't fire me, the IRS didn't fire me, but they basically said, hey, come back in a week, we're going to put you on administrative leave and let us know what your decision is. So I thought, you know, I've earned a pretty good reputation here, and one of the things that helps you to be believed is having a good reputation. So I didn't want them to tarnish that, and I believed that the best thing for me to do was to resign. So I prepared a resignation letter, addressed it to Commissioner Rosati, who was the commissioner of the IRS at the time. And again, just to summarize, based on the obvious futility of continuing to work for an agency that has standards and practices so different from what it professes, and standards and practices so contrary to my own, I'm officially resigning from the position of IRS Criminal Investigation Division Special Agent, effective as of the date of this letter. Well, I could also get into the difficulty of once you quit a job cold turkey, which I did. It was difficult financially to support a wife and 2 children, but with God's grace and blessings, you know, I was able to get back on my feet. Got a website, josephbannister.com, put out the word that, you know, I had some IRS knowledge, and also, I guess I learned, again, being very naive, that there weren't too many IRS agents that would take the time to actually look into these matters, let alone speak up about them, let alone resign over them. So I actually did get some media attention from these media organs and others. I also was part of an effort by this group called the We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education, and they put out a series of full-page ads in the USA Today. We even were able to obtain from Roscoe Bartlett, a congressman from back east in Maryland, to have a truth and taxation hearing. And the Department of Justice, through their representative, Mr. Bryant, actually agreed to come and participate in this hearing to actually iron out all these issues about exactly who's liable to pay the tax, you know, stacking up the law versus what the IRS does on a daily basis. And this was scheduled to occur, and it never did. They all backed out of it. You may not have known that, but there's plenty of information about those issues on my website.
Okay, so that's about half of the interview. The rest of it's on our website. You can find it on the internet as well. We have a few of his interviews. We have his report as well. Please look into that. For our purpose of today, a voluntary election, you heard it for yourself from the horse's mouth. Okay, we looked at the codes. We're gonna go look. We'll go back to look at the codes, and then we're gonna show you your remedy. It's right there. Okay. Here's the code again. I just showed it to you before we began. Voluntary compliance. So, what's the purpose of publishing revenue rulings and revenue procedures in the IRS bulletin? Is to promote correct and uniform application of tax laws by IRS employees and to assist taxpayers in attaining maximum voluntary compliance. The subject matter again is election volunteer. They have a magic book, a trick book. They like to trick you with definitions. Their definitions aren't what the average folks definition is. So they put voluntary in a couple of spots, and what's interesting to me is they put in the very beginning. They want to make it very clear. The forms themselves are voluntary. That's what they're saying. Now, in the code as we progress throughout the rest of the code, the term switches to election. Do you see how it's the same meaning? Election, volunteer. But hey, you made an election for 24. That's what they call you, making an election to file your 24 tax return. You voluntarily filed it. That's what they're saying. But they don't want to keep saying voluntary all the time. Make sense? They switch it to election. We're going to look at the word election in a minute. Okay, so this is me at 16. And you got to put yourself in my spot because you were there too. And this is what happened to you too. It all happened to all of us the same way. And all those fear based questions, okay? Come on, man. You're the only one that knows this. Why doesn't everybody know this? Okay, come on. And that's too good to be true. It has to be too good to be true. You're telling me nobody owes it? Well, they gotcha. That person that is saying that, you got to take them back to the beginning because the reason why they don't know this and nobody else knows this is because it wasn't the law, the 16th Amendment. And by the way, come back tomorrow and come back the next day. You will be very clear it's not the law that you owe it. And we just talked to the guy that examined the own codes. We're going to go deeper than Joe Bannister. We're going to look at the 16th Amendment. That's the foundation of what birthed forth a debt collection agency called the IRS. It's not the government, it's a debt collector assigned to collect the tax from 1913 when the law was passed. It is a constitutional law. It doesn't apply to almost anybody, nearly anybody, but it begins there. Okay, so that person that says these things, take them to your story and my story because this is how they got you. Okay, if somebody would have been faithful enough or have known any better, which nobody, look, I don't blame anybody in 1987. Hello, this is Domino's Pizza. My first day on the job. I'm making $4.50. I'm so happy to be here. Did you say you wanted pepperoni? I'm in Iowa and I'm working at Domino's. I did not have a hard hat on, camouflage, no machine gun. I'm not in the Middle East. I'm not in a tank. I'm at Domino's Pizza. If somebody on that first job would have said, you know what, son? You're going to get some paperwork, okay? This is your first job. Congratulations, by the way. You're going to enjoy your job because you're going to get some money. You haven't been working your whole life. This is your first one. All right, I'm ready. Wait till they give you the W-4 form. Look for it. W what? Let me write that down. W-4. Okay, I'll do that. And when they give that to you, make sure you put exempt on there because that tax that they're going to try to tax you in the future has to do with that form. And they're going to start taking money out of your paycheck. There's no point to do that because it doesn't apply to you. Gotcha. I have no idea what you're saying, but I'll do that. If somebody would have told me that and told you that, we would be saying that's too bad to be true. You don't know these things? Because if everybody was disclosed, full disclosure at the very beginning, and if your employers knew this too, they wouldn't do that. Any good-hearted employer wouldn't go, you know what? We don't mind you paying your own entire check. By the way, we agreed to pay you $4.50. We'd be happy to pay it all to you. And if you don't want anything deducted out of your check, we're happy to pay it to you. Happy, 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 happy. But if you do want to pay it for whatever reason and you don't know it, we'll go ahead and we'll put some of that in safekeeping, check after check after check, and then we're just going to donate it to your least favorite charity. Okay, if that was explained, there would be nobody paying this. Do you see the deception? Okay, and it begins right here. Here's the second page that nobody knows because nobody reads the fine print. Nobody reads circled in red, highlighted in yellow on the back of that form. Still today, exemption from withholding. You may claim exemption from withholding for 25 if you meet both of the following conditions. Number one, you had no federal income tax liability in 24, and you expect to have no federal income tax liability in 25. For me, this would have said 1987 and 1988. And what does it say? No federal income tax liability. I didn't have any liability. Hello, Domino's Pizza. This is my first day. Would you like pepperoni? Uh, 16 years old. That isn't fair. That isn't fair. Nobody told me this, right? No federal income tax liability. No, I didn't live in Washington, D.C., and I didn't work for the federal government. Thank you very much. I'm going to claim exempt. Hey, Uncle Bob, appreciate you telling me that. I have no idea what that means, and I don't really even care. But I do get more money, right? Isn't that what that means? I get more money? I like more money. Sure. I'll take more money. Okay, so this is where it begins. Okay, this is a non resident alien. Bizarre term. By the way, I just want to share, like, come on, man. Have you ever heard of this term? Let's use regular words like in our English dictionary so we all understand what we're saying. Oh, they just make up a word. And it's a double negative, non-resident and alien. That's tax language. You know, stuff that the common folk, I don't understand those things. I'm going to go to my tax guy cuz he's going to help me. Okay? He knows what those fancy words are. We don't even care cuz we don't know. This is so the question is how and when did you volunteer? How did this happen? Well, you bundle that money up because they captured a lot of it at age 16. I mean, a third of your money, maybe, a quarter. And you get the music to your ears. You, kid, you get a refund. A refund? How do I get some free money? That sounds like free money. Well, you know what you do? You do this. You see, it says U period S period individual. You become what's called a U period S period citizen. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, that's not relevant because you know you get a refund. I get money? Okay. What do? You just sign there. That's a contract. You sign the contract. That's how it happens. Okay, so you just change your standing on that day, tax language wise. Not with anything. Don't worry about your passport. Those are different questions that'll get brought up. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about Social Security. Don't worry about any of that. On the day that you did that, your standing changed from a non taxpayer, what they call a non resident alien, to a taxpayer. On that day, you signed voluntarily, you elected, and you became from a non resident alien to another tricky word, a resident alien by contract. Okay, now let's dive into this deeper. The non-resident alien makes the election. Here's their own codes. On Fridays, we go into this code because it's mentioned on their letters. It's 7701B1A. And guess what? They give you definitions for what purpose? For average everyday folks purposes. No, no. It says for purposes of this title. They're basically, in a nutshell, they're saying we're making this words up. We're just going to give you our definitions according to our title. So don't we need to know, convert their terminology to know what they're saying? Here's what they say. There's their definition of a resident alien and a non-resident alien. Now, we're going to look at resident alien first at the I'm sorry, non-resident alien at the bottom. Non-resident alien. What do they mean by non-resident alien? They say neither a citizen of the United States, which means a US citizen. Now, this is the trick. We all think we're a US citizen. Not to their codes. They define it as somebody living in a legislatively born person in Washington, D.C., or A resident of the United States. And this is where the resident alien comes in, that you aren't either one of these. That's a non resident alien. First thought is, oh, you must be from another country. Okay, we're going to describe this in a second. Okay, but look at this. The resident alien, how do they become a resident alien? Oh, or because they're going to be treated as a resident of the United States by doing this, making that first year election. That was me, that was you. When you signed that contract, you chose, albeit by deceit, to become a resident of the United States. And what does that mean? Glad you asked. What does that mean? To be treated as a non resident alien. In tax code, they call Washington, D.C. the United States. Yeah, they don't, not regular words like we use. They call United States. So have you ever figured yourself as an alien to the United States where you are, and you're also a non-resident alien? And a person that lives there is a resident, but the only people that are resident are the resident aliens are the ones that signed their way in or a US citizen. So if you don't live there, right here, this little 10 square mile area, different jurisdiction, you are and always have been a non-resident alien no matter where you live. The problem is you haven't changed your standing with the IRS from that earliest age you told them. And this for 40, 50, 60 years, however old you are. Yep, I live in Washington, D.C. Yep, I work for the Army because you had told them that at that first contract. Okay, so back to this code here, their definitions. How do you change this? Can you cancel your election? Can you cancel it right here? This election, can you cancel this? Yes. They can't trap you forever. And guess how fancy a word they call this? They call it a revocation of election. All you have to do is notify them. Hey, by the way, none of that taxes I've been paying all these years. You got me. Keep it. Keep the change. I'm out though. Okay. All you do is cancel that election and all these terminologies switch. You're no longer a U.S. citizen. You're no longer in Washington, D.C. You're no longer a resident alien. You're no longer going to be treated as a resident of the United States. You are back to a non-resident alien by simply doing this. This is a copy, a snapshot of the forms we help you file. This is what, if you want our services, we help you send this election off, a revocation. You send this to them. The second you drop that in the mail, you have changed your standing to no longer be under their J. Come back on the the history days because we talk and we drive home jurisdiction. You're not in their jurisdiction, it doesn't apply to you. That's that simple. Okay, so this is how we provide you support. We're here every day, 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, Monday through Saturday, for 2 hours on our question answer. We're going to begin question answer right now. We have training on Monday nights. Tonight is our next training to look over your documents. If you decide to go through with it with us and start our services, we give you the revocation election documents with your unincorporated association documents. We go over the documentation tonight on Monday nights. Access to our community center. There's an affiliate link. Share the good news with family, friends, and fellow Americans. You get $500 for just sharing the news, good news if they decide to go forward. You have lifetime support. This is as important as the documents themselves because you don't have to do this by yourself. We're here in a community to help you, and we provide you that support. The revocation election documentation, which we just shared, and the setup of your own unincorporated nonprofit association, which has an exempt EIN with the IRS. It's a legal entity. You can use it in any state. You need to have bylaws and constitution to set up your bank account. And it's great for estate planning. What does it do for you? Well, it removes all reporting to that Social Security number. It allows your Social Security number to have no income. That means you can qualify for benefits of any kind. That's the point of your Social Security number, to get benefits. It protects all your assets from liens, judgments, collections, creditors, the IRS, collection activity. It has no contractual relationship with the IRS, no federal income tax, no state income tax, no filings required, and is the ultimate estate planning tool. It is far better than a trust. So welcome to our community. This is unincorporated associations. Hopefully, we made sense out of the nonsensical. It's extremely nonsensical, but that's the only way they could deceive you. Please understand that is the basis of your fear in not understanding the deceit and not having the knowledge. So let's open up for question and answer.